Hello there, my lovely jewelry makers. I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this elegant wirework tennis bracelet. Now of course the options are endless with the materials you put together depending how you want it to look, and because of all the texture it's also a great one to oxidize. Now as usual, these bracelets will also be available for sale in my shop. The link to that will be in the description box down below. Otherwise, if you want to learn how you can make your own, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we'll need. Now the wire that I'm using is a regular round silver coated copper wire, and the first gauge here is a 1mm, which will be our base wire, and then I'm using a 0.4mm, which will be our weaving wire. And then the beads I'll be adding in are these 3mm rounds. Now the specific ones I'm using are faceted rose gold coated hematite beads, but you can easily play around with different shapes and of course color depending on the look that you want. And then of course we need our findings as well, so I'm using a lobster claw clasp and extended chain and putting it together with a few jump rings. You can of course use whatever kind of clasp you want to, or even make your own. As for the tools, I'm using my flush cutters here to be able to cut our wire, tweezer nose and chain nose pliers to help manipulate the wire, and 6-step bell making pliers for any loops that we need to make. Now you'll be able to find the material list in the description box down below along with useful links. Otherwise, let's get it all ready and let's get started. Then the lengths of wires we'll need to cut is first of all 6 lengths of our 1mm, or about 35 centimeters each, and these will be the base wires. You can also use more or less wires. That will then determine how wide your bracelet is going to end up being. As for the 0.4mm wire here, I'm leaving that attached to the reel. That way we have minimum wastage. So to get started, I'm going to grab one length of the base wires first of all, and then I take my weaving wire as well and just start towards one end. I'm going to put the weaving wire behind the base wire, and I'm just going to make sure to leave about 5 centimeter tail or so. Then just hold on to the tail and the weaving wire there, and then we just need to wrap the weaving wire around the base wire just one time to get it attached first of all. And then from here I'm going to grab the next base wire, lay that right above the first one, and then take the weaving wire here and go over the top of both of them, come down behind, and then go over the top of both of them again, and make sure that these wraps are sitting next to each other and not overlapping in any way, and then just bring it down behind again. Now I'm going to bring it up between the two base wires straight away, and then push against the previous wraps that we've done. It's also going to help tighten them up. And then I'm going to bring in the next base wire, lay that as the new top one. From here, grab the weaving wire, go over the top of the top 2 base wires now, so I'm not going over the top of the bottom one there because we're coming up between the 2 bottom ones. So just go over the top of the top 2, make sure to push that nice and tight, come down behind, up in the same place, so between the bottom 2, push that down, go over the top of the same top 2 there and come down behind, and then straight away up between the 2 that we just wrapped over the top of. And again, you can then use that to help push everything nice and tight. So we have 3 base wires in now. I'm going to grab the next one, lay that as the new top one, and take the weaving wire, go over the top of the top 2 base wires, and you can probably start to see a pattern now. Come down behind, come up in the same place so we can wrap over the top of the same 2. So we're always getting our 2 wraps over the top of the same 2 base wires, and come straight up between the same 2 that we just wrapped over the top of, and use that to push them nice and tight. And you then just want to repeat with the remaining base wires. And now I added in my last one here, so I've got the 6 base wires in total. When you add that last one, you don't want to take your weaving wire up between the 2 base wires as we've done throughout. So I'm going to move my way back down, which means I'm going to go down 1 base wire. So in this case here, because I'm using 6, I'm coming up between, right in the middle of all of them, so that we can wrap around these 2 base wires here, which is equivalent to the one right on the other side of the top one. So if you can imagine here, these are steps that go going upwards. Now we need to come back downwards. So go over the top of those 2, push it down, up in the same place, so we can keep doing the double wraps over the same base wires, and make sure your wraps are nice and tight together. Step down 1 base wire and then go over the top of the next 2 base wires down. Make sure to do the double wrap and step down a base wire again. I've now reached the point where I'm coming up between the bottom 2 base wires. So do that double wrap over these next 2 base wires here. Push it nice and tight. And at this point, I'm now going to stop. So we're not going to do the final double wrap around the bottom 2 base wires, because we now need to start also adding in the pattern of the base wires. So you can see we've ended up with a little pyramid there. It's kind of just missing the last wrap on the bottom. So what we need to do is take that bottom base wire that is kind of more free than the others because we didn't do that last wrap, and I'm going to lift it up a little bit. So push it upwards away from the others, and then push it over to the opposite side. So it looks a little something like that. You can kind of see it follows that first side of steps that we made. And then from there, we need to have this base wire joining back in with the others. So come back out in that same direction. But now it's moving from the bottom and up to the top instead. So it's kind of just swapping place. So I'm going to put my thumb on that wire because it's in place now. And then I'm just going to bring it back down So it comes straight out to the side again in the same direction as the others and ends up sitting as the new top one. So it ends up as something a bit like this. And from here we need to continue weaving. So I'm grabbing my weaving wire again, and you can see the last double wrap that we made is technically now the bottom one. So we now need to move away back upwards again, which means I need to come up between those two bottom base wires, push that down, go over the top of the next base wires, come up in the same place so we can do that double wrap, and then come up between those two base wires that we just wrapped over the top of and push that nice and tight. Now you might find that this base wire that we brought from the bottom to the top is a little bit fiddly at the moment and a bit loose. That's just in the beginning here until we get the pattern more settled. It gets a little bit easier to hold on to, but just keep going. Step up one base wire, wrap over the top of the next top two, come up in the same place and do another wrap for the double, and just keep working your way like this all the way to the top, including using that new top base wire. And once we're at the top here, we're just going to work our way back down just like we did the first time. So step down one base wire so we can continue this zigzag pattern we've got going on. Do the double wraps just like the other times. Step down one base wire and then come down between the two base wires we just wrapped over the top of previously. Push it down nice and tight. Do the double wrap, working our way to the bottom. So coming up between the bottom two base wires, down between the previous two we wrapped over the top of, and again make sure to do that double wrap. And I've now reached the point where we have the bottom base wire left just like we did the first time there that we haven't wrapped. And before we continue, I'm then going to again bring that bottom base wire over the top of the others and make that the new top base wire. So just make sure you're happy with how everything is, that all your wraps are nice and tight. Then take the bottom base wire here and push it upwards just like we did before, so you can see it goes away from the others, and then push it over the top, and then at the top put your fingers on it so it stays in place, and then just bring it back out to join up with the others. So it looks a little something like that. And then we just want to pick back up the weave again, so come up between the two base wires we wrapped over the top of previously. And now because this was the bottom wrap, we need to work our way back upwards just like I showed you before, and then just do your double wraps over two base wires at a time, working your way towards the top and incorporating that new base wire at the top that we brought from the bottom there. Once you've done that, work your way back down, and remember to leave out the bottom base wire because that's the one we need to bring over and make the new top one. And that's basically just how you want to keep going and create this pattern here for however long you need it to be. So now I've got the length that I want. You might see that there's a slight twist to the piece, so to counteract that, you just want to grab onto the ends and just twist it slightly in the opposite direction just to basically straighten it back out. And then we can go in and cut off the weaving wire from the reel. Now if you want to add beads, you just want to leave a tail of about 60 centimeters or so. Then I'm just going to take the tail and put it out of the way for now because I just want to finish off the ends of the base wires first. So it's the same on both ends. I'm just going to show you on one. Now what I'm going to do is take the very first wire as if we were kind of continuing this pattern that we did and push it upwards just like previously, and then bring it over the top towards the top again of all the other base wires. And then I'm going to bring it down behind so it comes facing straight downwards and basically is wrapping around the other base wires. And you can also see it just continues this pattern that we have nicely, so it blends in. Now I'm then going to take the next base wire and then also push that up and bring it over the top of all the others, bring that around towards the back and come down next to the other one, and make sure that on the back they are flat next to each other and not overlapping. And I'm basically going to do that with all of them. So bring it over the top, down behind, and down straight next to the other ones. You can see we're getting less and less of them sticking out at the end now, until I then do the second to last one. We have one wire left sticking out at the end. Come over the top of that, bring it down behind, and then this last one I'm going to leave. So I'm not going to bring that over because obviously you can see we don't have anything to bring that over the top of. So just leave that sticking out at the end. We're going to use this to make a loop with, or you can make a clasp with it if you prefer that. And now with these wires that are coming down at the back, I'm just going to flip it around to the back here so we can kind of see them better. I want to go in and start cutting them off. So we obviously need to make sure that they are wrapped around nicely. You can start to bring them over a little bit further, kind of as if they're going back towards the front again, but don't do it all the way. We just kind of need these wires to hook around at the back, and then bring in your flush cutters, and we need to go in and start cutting them off. Go all the way across until we got the last one. Get them out of the way, and then you're going to be able to see the ends of the wire here are sticking out a little bit, and if you put your finger over it you can feel them being scratchy, so obviously we don't want that. So to get rid of them, I'm going to grab my chain nose pliers and basically start to squeeze them in tighter against the bracelet. So we're making sure these ends are sticking in towards the other wires rather than out and away where it can catch or scratch on skin or clothes. And then just run your finger over it again so you can't feel it. And if you can't feel it, then you know it's ready. And now to make the loop with the very last one there, I'm going to go in and take my chain nose pliers again. And then I want to place them sideways, just a little bit above where the wraps are. And then bend the wire to the side, something like that. Then I grab my 6-step bell making pliers and I'm just going to use the smallest step on there. You can also use round nose pliers. Place them on the bend and then bring the length of wire all the way around the pliers. So we create a full circle and grab onto that circle with your pliers, because then we need to use the rest of the tail here to fill in that little gap between the loop and the other wraps. So we just want to wrap this length around that little gap until we basically don't have any more space, and then we can go in and cut off the excess of that. Get rid of that, and then also this little end, make sure you just push that in so you can't feel that with your finger either. And then we have our loop on this end where you can attach a clasp. Now of course, flip it around, do the same thing on this end, and we have our loops on both ends. So now if we want to add in the beads here, we just need to get the weaving wire into position that's coming out towards the back. And what we need to do is get it to come out towards the front, but in between some other base wires. So what I want is for this weaving wire here to come up between the second and the third base wire from the bottom. And it can sometimes help pushing it through with your pliers. You get a better grip on the wire. And also make sure it's coming up after the weave ends. So just pull it through to the front all the way so it gets nice and tight on the back. And then we want to start adding the beads in straight away. So I'm going to grab my first bead, add it onto the length of wire, let it drop down. And then we need to kind of cross from the bottom right here, if we look at it from this angle, and cross up to the top left corner almost. So again, I'm going to just skip the top 2 base wires and go down between the second and third one from the top, and then just having this wire come out towards the back now, and then just pull it tight so the bead ends up sitting right in the middle of this little area where we then have a curve of the base wire on either side. And then to get into position for the next one, we again need the weaving wire to come out on the bottom right corner here from the back towards the front. So come up between the second and third base wire from the bottom and push it through to the front, and just make sure it comes out in this next little section. And then I like to just make sure that I put my finger on the bead as I'm pulling this tight on the back to make sure the bead stays tight as well, because we don't want the weaving wire to get loose anywhere. And then we want to grab the next bead, add it to the weaving wire, let it drop down, and then again come down between the second and third base wire from the top and go from the front towards the back, and then pull that tight. So again, the bead ends up sitting sideways right in the middle of this little section. And you can see we now have 2 beads added in. So each little section here where we have the curves on either side is going to have a bead right in the middle, and you just want to keep going like this all the way down to the other end. So now I reach the other end, we just got to finish off the weaving wire here. So I'm going to take it, and we want to make sure we're wrapping it around a single base wire a few times before we cut it off. So just find a gap in some of your base wires, then start to pull the weaving wire through and just bring it around a few times like I said. Make sure the wraps are nice and tight, and then I'm going to go in and cut off the excess. Get rid of that. And then we just need to make sure that that end of the weaving wire is pushed in between the base wires so it's not sticking out and we can feel it with our finger. And then we just need to attach our findings to the loops. All that's left to do then is to shape the bracelet. So you can shape this around something that has the size and shape you want it to have, like a bracelet mandrel or whatever you have handy, or you can go in with your hands and fingers and just start putting a curve into it. So obviously make sure the front with the beads here are facing outward, and then we add a curve and just go back and forth and gently add the curve. Don't go into one place and just do a bend, that'll put it out of shape, but add that gentle curve going back and forth from one side to the other until we end up with the 2 ends close to each other so we can use the clasp. And then we have the bracelet finished and ready to wear. So I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial for this elegant wirework tennis bracelet, and don't forget they will be available for sale in my shop, where you can also sign up to my newsletter so you don't miss any future updates. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.